We've had a lot of law enforcement officers leave the state of California for other states, particularly Texas, because, what we're finding out is law enforcement officers saying, look, we want to enforce the law, but the state legislature is passing bills and the governor is signing them into law that make it impossible for us to enforce the law and keep innocent people safe. And so they want to go to a state where they're actually allowed to enforce the law. And so that's why we're seeing this mass exodus of law enforcement officers, even though I'm sure the majority of them would rather stay in California, many of whom, may have been born and raised here, but the environment just isn't one that they want to work in. And a lot of them, it's an environment they don't want to raise their families in. I think the trend is pretty apparent. If you look at the number of just, in San Diego alone, they lost, I think in one fell swoop a few years ago, over 200 law enforcement officers. And that wasn't because they were retiring. The majority of it was because of attrition, because they were resigning to go work for another law enforcement agency and many times in another state. So I think it is a trend that we're going to see continue. There's a lot of law enforcement officers going to Texas for a number of reasons. One, the cost of living, is much better in Texas than it is here. Their gas prices certainly aren't as high as ours. The electricity prices, water, all of those things. But also, Texas does have sort of a pattern and history of allowing their law enforcement officers to actually enforce the law. And that is what, when you go into law enforcement, that's what you sign up for, right? You want to protect the public. The majority of these folks are going someplace where they feel welcome and where they feel that they're valued, as a law enforcement within that state. The number of law enforcement officers that are leaving the force or leaving the state, it's a broader effect beyond just not having enough people out there, patrolling the streets. But I mean, in some cases, they have a hotline set up to report, non-violent types of crimes that is manned by just a few people. So if you're someone that maybe has had some property stolen or something like that, that's a non-violent crime, you may be waiting a very, very long time to get any justice. And I think a lot of times, people just give up. And so then we see not only law enforcement officers leaving the state, but we see actual Californians leaving the state too, because they're fed up as well. So it's this whole kind of, codependent system that is in place here that has everybody really on edge. You'd be hard pressed to drive around in the places in Los Angeles that you used to go that were safe and you can walk freely on the street, where now you are very concerned for your safety, and you certainly wouldn't go there at night. And that's not just Los Angeles, that's in many areas of the state. It used to be, it was the bigger cities. That is not the case anymore. And I think that's why we see so many people leaving. Well, law enforcement has had great difficulty enforcing the law, namely because of Prop 47 and Prop 57, and then another law passed in 2020, which is I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it has to do with race. So, when you have Prop 47, which reclassified a lot of crimes that used to be, a much higher punishment, reclassified them down to, say, a ticket. Then you have Prop 57, which allowed for the early release of more people who would not have been released prior to that initiative passing. And then when you have the 2020 law that allows inmates to have their case essentially retried as long as they say, well, I think that I was arrested for this because of my race. When you combine all of these things, it really puts law enforcement in a very difficult position to, again, not be able to protect the public. And that's what they're called to do. I mean, that's in their DNA. That's why they go into a job that can be very dangerous. They go into a job where, they don't know and their families don't know every night if they're actually coming home. Very strange things happen out there just on a routine traffic stop. And so if someone is going to put that uniform on and put their life at risk like that every single day, and then be told, but you can't enforce the laws, then they have no way to protect people. And subsequently, you see them either leave law enforcement altogether, or they go somewhere where they are allowed to make sure that everybody is following the rules. There are a number of people, particularly on the left side of the aisle, who want to decriminalize a lot of crimes. And they're suggesting that this is racially motivated, that the reason that so many people are being arrested for these crimes is because it's racially motivated. I say step back and look at the data, look at the analysis, because it has been done. You can't cherry pick the information that you like that fits your narrative. Really look at the data to see what the trends are and then come up with a reasonable solution rather than immediately diverting to, oh, well, this is a racist policy. Not everything is a racist policy. I would argue California, out of all the states, far from being racist just because of who we are as a state. But no matter your ethnic background, you want to be safe in your communities, and you want your business to be safe, and your daughter to be safe walking wherever she's walking, and your son to be safe walking home from practice, and your business to be safe. Everybody wants that. It doesn't matter what their race is. And that's, Democrat and Republican alike. You're not going to find many Democrats out there who've been a victim of crime who will then turn around and say, well, I think all of the policies are wonderful and they're working just great. Don't change a thing. I mean, that's just not the case. And I think, legislators are hearing that from their constituents. I think there are a number of things that the state can do to make things better here. It's not impossible. California hasn't always been this way. So it's not as though, all is lost and it's hopeless. One of the things that can be done is for voters to vote for the changes that are going to be proposed regarding Prop 47, which will be on the ballot in November. That would be a huge, huge win for all of California, because right now when we see some of these crimes that are committed, whether it's the smash and grabs or all the theft that's taking place that's causing some of our small businesses to close, things like that, or some of the other crimes that are being committed. I am hopeful, though, given that amendments to Prop 47 are going to be very likely on the ballot in November, that maybe some of our law enforcement officers, there are really good ones, will come back, or at least we won't hemorrhage anymore, because they have had it, much like a lot of Californians, law enforcement in particular has said, we just, we can't do this anymore. One of the other things that can be done now is for the state legislature to put policies in place that, again, allow law enforcement officers to do their job. And that's very easy to do. It's as simple as an assembly member or a senator introducing a bill and saying, this is a crime, or this is not going to be tolerated. Here's the punishment for this particular crime. All of these things can be done. The legislature can do that very, very easily. I am hopeful. I think it's going to take some time. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take several years, I think, to get things back, on track. Do I ever think, we'll be a red state? Probably not. But I think if we could be more somewhere in the middle, that would be great, because when you get to the point where even progressive Democrats are saying, hold on a second, you've gone far, far, far off the path.
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now, because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we are building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California, so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.